And we're coming back to my V-shaped wrap, which is in the final stages, which is so very exciting for me. It's been sitting for far too long because I've been focusing on other projects, or I needed better light to do the sewing or whatever. So this is the fabric after taking it off the loom, weaving in ends, fixing mistakes, and as it turned out, just one of my warp ends had been too loose, and I partway through the beaming process, and I made, and it just basically it was a problem all the way down from the second half of the weaving till the very end. So I fixed that, and in fact, I fixed it by pulling it out up until the point, remember that I wove this in a long strip and with markers so that I could cut out this square. So I unpicked this up to the point of the square, the edge of the square, threaded it on my tapestry needle, and just re-wove with a needle, just needle wove all the way down the length of this panel, because otherwise it would have stuck out for us like a sore thumb. Now, do I fix absolutely every weaving mistake? The answer is it depends. So it depends on the fibers involved. If it's wool, yes, absolutely. If I see a mistake, I will cut a length, or in this case, and you can see this mistake right here, I would have cut a length of warp yarn, and I would have needle wove it, starting from about here to about here, and then I would have trimmed the ends, and then I would have cut out this mistakey part so that I could trim the ends after wet finishing. However, because this fabric has a lot of cotton in it and a lot of superwash wool in it and silk, that just does not work that way. It's not going to full into a more felted kind of fabric. On this project, every now and then, if I just saw an isolated mistake like this, I decided that trying to fix it would make it more prominent, kind of like the Streisand effect in weaving. So I did not do that, and I I'm just going to call it artistic license or something. So remember that I had woven this. Okay, let me back up again. There we go. Let's go to here where you can see this. Now let's back up one more time. Okay, and now you can see more of my messy kitchen. So I wove this in a strip. I wove one section, and then when I had reached the length that I wanted, I wove 2 picks of a contrast yarn, and in fact, you can still see the contrast yarn in here because when I zigzagged this, I accidentally zigzagged over my contrast yarn. Um, then I wove a square, and it's pretty close to square. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I wove a square, and then did 2 more picks of the contrast yarn, and then I just wove until I ran out of warp. So this will be actually a longer end than I had anticipated, but that's fine. So let's talk now about what I did after everything got off the loom. I fixed the mistakes. As usual, I wet finished by soaking for 20 minutes, rolling in a towel for half an hour, then setting the towel and the fabric, uncut fabric, in the dryer for about 15 minutes, which is my usual, and checked it religiously every 5 minutes. Then I let it air dry. Then I pressed it. Then I trimmed all the tails. And what I finally got around to today was setting up uh, my zigzag and my decorative binding so that I could finally finish this project. So on each side of my red contrast yarn markers, I zigzagged, and then I trimmed to a small length, and then I just pulled out the contrast yarn. And what uh, and the zigzagging part, it is good. It is really important if you can manage this and do something so that you can manage this. I would suggest. Uh, follow the same line of weft all the way down. Don't veer off from that, even if it means, so notice how, just how while it's sitting on the table, this stripe is a little shorter in length than this stripe, which is a cotton yarn. This is a wool sock yarn, and this is a cotton yarn. Um, you still want to follow that line, even if it means things go a little catawampus as you're doing the zigzag stitching. That was step one. And so now I've got 3 panels that are all cut apart and they are all protected. Then I dove into my stash of decorative sari silk ribbon. And this is something this is stuff that I ordered on Etsy. I don't even remember how long ago. And it's just these hand cut strips that, and I believe it's a women's consortium of some kind, that women just, they cut up old saris into these strips, and then they just wind them into these balls, and you can buy these balls on Etsy. And it turns out, because they're about 2 inches wide, they are perfect for decorative bindings. Now, they are not, the trick to it is they're not cut perfectly evenly because people are not machines. So you will get some variation, and you'll get all these little loose edges and things, but that's all going to get covered up when I fold over anyway. Also, you can't be sure how much you're getting of any one color. So basically, I just tore this roll apart until I found a color that was going to work with my woven fabric. And fortunately, it not only I had one piece that was long enough to go around all 4 sides of the square, which is going to be crucial for reasons you'll see in a second. But I found a second strip in, if not the same color, so close as not to make a difference. And I was able to do just the 2 raw edges of my long pieces. So this sari silk turned out to be a really great investment. And I could have chosen patterned ones as opposed to these solid color ones. But since there's so much going on in this fabric anyway, I went with solid. I could have chosen orange, but it was such a bright orange that I felt it was going to take over. So I just went with this turquoise, and I think it's going to be lovely. So now I'm in the process. I have, and this was the tricky part. This is what took me the longest sitting at my sewing machine this morning, is remembering that all these fabrics are going to need to, I want my patterning. Okay, see, and this is why I have to sketch everything out. So I want my patterning to line up. And let's back out again. You've all seen my messy kitchen many, 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 many times. Okay. So my warp stripe here is going to line up with this long panel, and my warp stripe here is going to line up with this long panel. And even though it's broken by this turquoise binding, the effect is still going to be what I want. So as this hangs on the wearer's back, it's going to be this asymmetrical diamond, and everything's going to line up is the plan. So figuring out where and how, and honestly, in the end, if it turns out that I sew the wrong side, the hand stitched side of one panel to the machine stitch side of another, I don't think that's any big deal. I don't think anybody's going to notice, because honestly, my hand stitching is really, really good. Okay, so how did I do that, you ask? Below, always below the zigzag stitch, and by below, I mean in the right side of the fabric. I'm not the seam allowance, but the right side of the fabric. I just machine stitched. And so I kept my woven fabric on top, and again, tried really hard to follow a line of weaving, whether it's warp or weft, it doesn't matter, but just follow that line straight down and tuck in, or leave enough to be tucked in when I hand stitch, a little edge here. So here's my fold. And uh, you can see on the bit that I've already done that I have, and I'm probably going to have to undo this later, but I have sewn the two edges of this binding together. And when I got to this corner, I hand stitched and hand stitched, but I just left the miter. I just kind of folded it and finger pressed it. So this only works because I had my trusty little ruler, and in fact, I have it with me while I hand sew down the raw edge to just make sure that everything's staying the same width all the way across. And it's taken a lot of clips, it's taken a lot of pressing. And when I finish, I'm still going to have a little bit of leeway that if there's one awkward spot, which is likely to happen on this multicolor sock yarn that doesn't seem to, that seems to have shrunk a little bit more than the other yarns, I can still finesse it with the iron. And part of the reason I'm hand stitching this instead of machine stitching it or trying to stitch in the ditch or some other fancy way that sewists have to apply bindings, hand sewing gives me a lot more control. So if there's an awkward spot, honestly, I can just kind of finger press things and adjust things and fudge it. I'm all about the fudge. So when I have this thing finally done and pressed, I will be sure to show it again because honestly, I'll be so proud of it. Um, now my biggest worry is whether I'm going to be able to stretch, and I'm reasonably certain I can because I've been doing this for forever and I'm pretty good at it. Forgive the humble brag there. Um, is whether I can stretch because this square is not quite square. Can I stretch and ease in the fullness of a slightly wider piece so that they match? And I'm guessing that I'm going to be able to because they're within, I'm going to say, a quarter inch of each other. So we're just going to have to see how that goes. So my plan is after I've finished sewing down this raw edge of the binding and pressed it into place, that then I will do another kind of invisible stitch to join these two panels together. That would be one way to do it. If I really have to fudge, I will put one over the other and stitch up this edge, and then on this side, stitch up this edge. But it's going to be beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed that.